The viral confrontation. When a hoodie revealed everything. Your boarding pass is fake. You don't belong here. The words sliced through the first-class cabin of Starwing Flight SA-134 like a blade through silk. 30 passengers froze mid-conversation, their champagne glasses suspended in air. As flight attendant Emma Walsh pointed an accusing finger at the man in the gray hoodie, Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Gate B12, October 15th, 2024, 8:15 a.m. James Carter stood in the aircraft doorway, his weathered boarding pass clutched in steady hands, facing the kind of public humiliation that destroys lives in seconds. The Boeing 737's first-class cabin fell silent as every pair of eyes turned toward him, some curious, others judgmental, all waiting for the show to begin. He didn't know it yet, but in exactly 6 minutes, he would fire her in front of everyone. Where are you watching from? Because what happened next wasn't just shocking, it was the moment one man's courage rewrote the rules of an entire industry. The airline's computer systems had been glitching all morning, causing chaos that rippled through O'Hare like wildfire. Flight SA-134 to Miami was running 2 hours behind schedule, and tensions were already high when James stepped aboard. Emma Walsh noticed him immediately. Her eyes swept over his casual attire, faded jeans, white sneakers, that damning gray hoodie with the precision of a security scanner. In her mind, the calculation was simple. This man didn't belong in first class. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice cut through the ambient noise with surgical precision. "That ticket isn't valid. Your name doesn't appear on my passenger manifest." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Conversations died instantly. Newspapers rustled to stillness. Even the soft jazz playing overhead seemed to fade as 30 pairs of eyes turned toward the unfolding drama. James paused, his hand still reaching for the overhead compartment. "I'm sorry. What?" Emma's confidence bloomed like poison ivy. "Your boarding pass. There's been a mistake. You're not listed in first class." Her gaze lingered pointedly on his hoodie like it was evidence in a criminal case. From seat 2B, Nathan Brooks lowered his Financial Times with theatrical precision. His $3,000 Armani suit was perfectly tailored, his Italian leather shoes polished to mirror brightness, and his Rolex caught the cabin lights as he lifted his champagne, the crystal catching light like a weapon. "Probably grabbed someone else's boarding pass," Nathan said with a chuckle dripping condescension. "These system glitches cause confusion. Easy mistake for someone who's not familiar with first-class procedures. Have you ever felt the sting of being judged solely by your appearance?" James Carter was about to transform this moment of public humiliation into a lesson that would echo through every corner of the aviation industry. James reached into his pocket with deliberate calm, producing his ID and boarding pass. "Please check again. I paid for this seat." Emma barely glanced at the documents before shaking her head. "The computer system doesn't lie, sir. Technology is reliable." She handed the papers back with a dismissive flick that made them flutter like wounded birds. "I need you to find your correct seat in the main cabin." Liam Hayes, the head flight attendant, approached with his tablet clutched like a shield. Years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, but Emma's confidence was infectious. "Let me double-check," Liam said, fingers dancing across the screen. Seconds stretched like taffy as he scrolled through passenger lists, his brow furrowing deeper with each swipe. Finally, he looked up apologetically. "I'm not seeing James Carter in first class. Sorry, man. System's acting up, but seat assignments are clear." That's when Ava Chen began recording. The young journalist's instincts screamed that something significant was unfolding. Her phone came up smoothly, capturing Emma's triumphant expression, Nathan's amused superiority, and most importantly, James's controlled composure like a storm-gathering strength. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their leather seats, some pretending to read while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. The aircraft's engines hummed steadily. But inside this pressurized theater, time seemed suspended between accusation and truth. Marcus Rodriguez in seat 3A whispered to his wife, "This feels wrong. The man looks legitimate. Churm." But his voice was lost in the collective murmur of judgment that had already formed its verdict. Sarah Kim, a flight attendant trainee observing from the galley, felt her stomach churn as she watched Emma's aggressive stance. Something in her training manual flickered through her mind, a section about treating all passengers with equal dignity, regardless of appearance. But Emma was her mentor, and challenging authority wasn't part of the program. James's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "I'm telling you there's been a mistake. Check your system more thoroughly." Nathan leaned forward, champagne glass glinting like liquid gold. "Look, friend, people like you don't belong in first class. Maybe if you dressed appropriately, there wouldn't be this confusion." His smile revealed expensive dental work. "This isn't your crowd." The words hung in the recycled air like toxic fumes. The cabin had become a coliseum, and everyone was waiting to see who would emerge victorious. James turned slowly to face Nathan, and something shifted in his expression, subtle as a shadow crossing the sun, but unmistakable. "People like me?" His voice was quiet, but dangerous. "What exactly do you mean? At 35,000 feet, everything changes in seconds." The cabin fell into earthquake silence. Every breath seemed amplified. Some passengers looked genuinely uncomfortable, sensing they were witnessing something that would haunt their memories. Others wore expressions of entitled amusement. James looked around the cabin slowly, his gaze touching each face like a painter studying his canvas. Then something shifted. The careful composure gave way to something else entirely. A smile began to form, not friendly, but the smile of someone about to reveal a winning hand. "I own 45% of Starwing Airlines," he said, words falling like stones into a deep well. "This seat belongs to me, and every single one of you just made the biggest mistake of your professional lives." The revelation hit like a seismic shock. Emma's face transformed from smug confidence to ashen disbelief in a heartbeat. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Words turned to concrete in her throat. The color drained from her cheeks like water from a broken dam. Liam's tablet nearly slipped from nerveless fingers. "That's not..." The system would have... Nathan's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips, golden liquid trembling as his hand began to shake. His confident smirk dissolved like sugar in rain, replaced by the hollow stare of a man watching his assumptions crumble. The businessman's entire worldview shifted in that instant. His expensive education at Wharton, his corner office overlooking Manhattan, his seven-figure portfolio, none of it had prepared him for this moment when his prejudices were exposed before 30 witnesses with recording devices. Behind him, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a cardiovascular surgeon returning from a medical conference, felt vindicated. She'd watched the entire exchange with growing disgust, remembering her own experiences of being questioned about her first-class ticket while wearing scrubs after a 16-hour surgery. The assumptions people made based on clothing had followed her throughout her career, from being mistaken for a nurse to having patients question her credentials because she looked too young or too casual. Ava's camera captured every nuance, the beautiful, terrible moment when certainty crumbled and reality reasserted itself with devastating clarity. "Check your manual override system," James continued, voice carrying quiet authority that filled every corner of the cabin. "VIP passenger list, board of directors, priority designations your regular system doesn't display during technical difficulties." Liam's fingers shook as he navigated deeper into systems he rarely accessed. The cabin remained frozen, every passenger holding their breath like divers underwater. "Oh, dear God," Liam whispered. "James Carter, seat 1A, priority level maximum, board member status confirmed." Emma's knees buckled. She reached for the nearest seat back, face drained of color as the scope of her error became clear. She hadn't just insulted a passenger, she'd humiliated one of the people who signed her paychecks. Her mind raced through the implications. The employee handbook she'd memorized, the customer service awards on her apartment wall. The 5 years of perfect performance reviews, all of it now seemed meaningless against this single moment of catastrophic judgment. Meanwhile, passengers throughout the cabin began pulling out their phones. The age of social media had taught everyone that moments like this didn't just disappear. They lived forever in the digital realm, shared and reshared until they became cautionary tales. Jennifer Walsh, a college student in seat 5B, had already begun typing on Twitter, watching discrimination happen in real time on Starwing Air. Flight attendant just humiliated a passenger for wearing a hoodie. This is 2024, people. Discrimination alert, your airline shame. The tweet would eventually accumulate 50,000 retweets and spark a hashtag movement. But in this moment, it was just one voice among many beginning to document injustice. The next moment would define everything. 5 years ago, James began, his voice carrying the weight of remembrance. I stood in Heathrow Airport wearing this same hoodie. I just earned my company $3 million. But a desk clerk said the exact words I heard today, "You don't belong here." The cabin listened with rapt attention as James painted a picture of humiliation that transcended time and geography. She didn't check credentials, didn't verify my ticket. She saw my appearance and stripped away my dignity in front of strangers. His voice grew stronger. That humiliation burned into my soul. I promised I'd never let anyone else experience what I endured. Nathan sat frozen, expensive champagne forgotten, as the weight of his prejudiced words pressed down like a physical force. I bought my first Starwing shares 6 months later, not for revenge for change. I wanted to ensure dignity wasn't a luxury reserved for those who dress the part. Emma's voice cracked like breaking glass. We were following procedures. The system malfunction caused confusion. No, James interrupted, his voice cutting through her excuses with surgical precision. You were following fear disguised as protocol. Fear that someone who doesn't look like your idea of wealth might actually belong in your exclusive world. Emma's hands trembled. I was protecting our premium passengers. From what? From me, a paying customer who happens to wear comfortable clothes. James's voice rose, carrying years of suppressed anger. You turned procedure into prejudice, and protocol into persecution. Edrum, the cabin watched in stunned silence as Emma's carefully constructed defense crumbled. That's not true, Liam interrupted, his voice barely a whisper but carrying clearly. We received training to be suspicious of passengers who don't fit the typical first-class profile. Unwritten guidelines about questioning people who dress casually. The admission landed like a depth charge. Ava's camera captured Liam's shoulders, sagging under honesty's weight. Emma's face contorting with realization that her colleague had exposed the very system she was defending. Clara Nguyen from seat 4C suddenly found her voice. Years of suppressed humiliation finally breaking through. I was asked to move from first class last year, wearing a sweater and jeans, flying home from delivering a keynote speech to 2,000 tech executives in Silicon Valley. They said there was a ticket mistake, but I knew better. Her voice cracked with emotion as she continued. I was the only Asian woman in first class that day, the only one wearing casual clothes, the only one they questioned. I sat in coach for 5 hours, crying, wondering if I'd ever belong anywhere. The cabin fell silent as Clara's story hung in the air, like incense sacred, heavy, impossible to ignore. Robert Kim from seat 6A nodded grimly. Last month, Denver to Chicago, wearing my Army fatigues coming back from deployment, flight attendant asked if I was supposed to be in uniform class. I've served 3 tours overseas, but apparently that doesn't earn you respect at 35,000 feet. The testimonies began cascading like dominoes. Professional athletes, tech executives, doctors, lawyers, all sharing stories of being judged, questioned, humiliated based on their appearance, rather than their accomplishments. The reckoning had begun. "Then let's examine the evidence," James said. Business acumen taking control. "Liam, access the internal complaint logs for discrimination incidents. As a board member, I have that authority." Liam's fingers moved reluctantly across his tablet, searching through databases containing the airline's hidden history of failures. "Dozens of complaints," Liam said hollowly. "Passengers questioned about tickets, asked for additional ID, moved to different seats based on appearance. But here's the disturbing part: we were instructed to minimize these complaints and reports. Management said it protected the airline's reputation, but now I see it hid systematic discrimination." The cabin erupted in applause that started as single hands and grew into thunderous crescendo. The sound rolled through the aircraft like waves against a seawall, washing away uncomfortable silence. "Today, those unwritten rules end," James declared, voice carrying over applause with newfound authority. As Flight SA-134 descended toward Miami, justice was served at 30,000 feet. The Florida coastline stretched beneath them like a golden promise. But inside the aircraft, James was painting a different picture entirely. "Emma Walsh, your employment with Starwing Airlines is terminated immediately. Your actions represent everything wrong with the culture we've allowed to fester." Emma's face crumpled as reality crashed over her like a rogue wave. Years of career building dissolved in an instant. "Nathan Brooks, you are permanently banned from flying Starwing. Your comments revealed character we cannot tolerate in our skies." Nathan's champagne glass slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the floor in a cascade of crystal and golden liquid, 1,000 pieces reflecting his shattered arrogance back at him. Ava was already uploading footage to social media, her journalist instincts knowing this story needed immediate global reach. Within minutes, the video began accumulating views at astronomical rates. 3 days later, Atlanta headquarters. James stood before a packed auditorium at Starwing's Atlanta headquarters, facing hundreds of employees gathered to hear about their company's new direction. "Today, I'm announcing Sky Justice," James declared, voice carrying clearly through the advanced sound system. "This isn't just training or PR. This is fundamental transformation of how we treat every human being aboard our aircraft." The initiative was comprehensive and revolutionary. Every Starwing employee would undergo intensive bias elimination training, mandatory, ongoing, tied to performance evaluations and career advancement. 3 months later, the results were undeniable. 95% of employees completed Sky Justice training, customer satisfaction reached all-time highs, and passengers shared stories of feeling welcomed regardless of appearance. The transformation was remarkable and measurable. Starwing's Net Promoter Score jumped from 32 to 78 in 6 months. Revenue increased by 23% as word-of-mouth recommendations soared. Most importantly, discrimination complaints dropped to zero, not because they were being buried, but because the culture had fundamentally changed. Young college student Sarah Martinez posted about flying Starwing in torn jeans. The flight attendant smiled like I was the most important person on the plane. She offered me a blanket, asked about my studies, and made me feel like I belonged. This is how airlines should treat everyone. Elderly Robert Chen shared his story of flying with his grandson. "They didn't see my wheelchair or my casual clothes. They saw me as a human being deserving kindness. My grandson watched how they treated his grandfather with dignity, and that lesson is worth more than any first-class upgrade." Dr. Patricia Williams, the neurosurgeon who'd been questioned about her ticket while wearing scrubs after a 20-hour surgery, became a vocal advocate for the program. Starwing proved that change is possible. When leadership commits to dignity over discrimination, miracles happen. The ripple effects extended far beyond Starwing. Other airlines began implementing similar programs, afraid of being left behind in the new era of equality at altitude. Hotels adopted Digna-Stay policies. Car rental companies launched Respect Drive initiatives. An entire industry transformed because one man in a hoodie refuse to accept injustice. Every time James flies now, wearing his familiar hoodie in seat 1A, he makes a statement. The sight of James Carter in that seat became an industry symbol, not of power used to intimidate, but a reminder that truth doesn't need expensive packaging to shine brightly. Flight attendants point out his presence to new employees during training, explaining how the casually dressed man changed their entire industry. Most importantly, James demonstrated real power isn't about humiliating others, but lifting people up and creating systems, treating everyone with dignity. Every time he settles into seat 1A, wearing simple clothes and carrying his worn backpack, he makes a statement resonating throughout the cabin. Worth isn't measured by appearance. And justice, once awakened, transforms the world. James Carter's story transcends a simple seat dispute. It's a testament to human dignity and truth's transformative power. When society diminishes our worth through superficial judgments, remember your inherent value remains unshakable. A single voice, raised with conviction, can reshape perspectives and challenge assumptions. Carter's determination shows how personal courage illuminates pathways toward justice, creating ripples extending far beyond individual circumstances. The video of that confrontation has been viewed over 50 million times across all platforms. It's been studied in business schools as a case study in corporate responsibility. It's been shown in diversity training sessions across dozens of industries. Most importantly, it's inspired countless individuals to stand up when they witness injustice. Dr. Maria Santos, a professor of organizational behavior at Harvard Business School, includes the video in her curriculum. Carter's response demonstrates that true leadership isn't about position or title. It's about moral courage in moments that matter. He could have quietly taken his seat and filed a complaint later. Instead, he chose to educate, to transform, to ensure no one else would suffer what he'd endured. The James Carter Institute for Dignity and Service now operates on 3 continents, training service industry workers in respectful customer treatment, regardless of appearance, race, age, or economic status. The Institute's research has documented a direct correlation between dignified treatment and business success. This story could be yours. The next time you witness injustice, speak up. Stand firm. Your voice matters. Remember Jennifer Walsh, the college student who tweeted from seat 5B. Her thread about the incident sparked the dignity and travel movement, leading to policy changes at 6 major airlines. One tweet, one voice, one moment of courage that changed thousands of travel experiences. Remember Dr. Elena Vasquez, the surgeon who'd been silently enduring discrimination. She became Starwing's chief medical advisor, ensuring their policies accommodated healthcare workers traveling between emergencies. Her expertise saved the airline from multiple lawsuits and created industry-wide standards for treating medical professionals. Every person on that flight played a role in the transformation that followed. Some through action, others through witness, all through their shared humanity in a moment when dignity hung in the balance. Have you faced discrimination based on appearance? Have you witnessed someone being judged unfairly? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could inspire the next person to find their courage. Subscribe to Motivation for Success right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Together, we're building a world where every voice matters and every person is treated with the dignity they deserve. The revolution starts with you. Are you ready